Haribol, Hare Krishna. This is the ninth class of the Krishna book. We're on chapter 20. We just heard about how the Krishna consumed the second of the forest fires. We're going to have a little recap of some research that Bhakti and Julia did on that matter, consulting with his writings of previous acharyas, and we'll get to chapter 20. But first, as always, Shri Harinam Sankirtan.
Scenario? You ready to chant your little heart out? Okay, sweet soul. So coming into your comfortable seat, shifting, moving around in any way you need to. Open and close your mouth, release your jaw. We start with our opening prayers. This mood of receptivity, of humility, and of gratitude for our teachers. We offer that gratitude and be open to receive the torchlight of knowledge. Take a deep breath in, fill up. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Shri Shri Gaura Nitai ki, Brahma Bhakti Asami and beyond ki, Tuesday Shastra Study Group ki, Hari Hari Bol, Krishna Book ki.
Om Jnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, while you're all thinking of any comments, reflections, or questions from the last week, I'm going to read some of the research that Julia undertook for us. So we were inquiring about the nature of the forest fires, how there's two, how are they demons, are they like sentient, what does that mean? So she did some research. The fires, according to Srila Sanatana Goswami and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, they've commented that perhaps a loyal friend of Kaliya is the serpent demon, the many-hooded serpent, had assumed the form of a forest fire to avenge his friend. Or perhaps the forest fire was manifested by a demon who was a follower of Kamsa's. So that's some commentary from our acharyas. Of note, in the commentaries of the acharyas, we notice that details like this sometimes vary by yuga, like by kalpa. In other words, Krishna's pastimes, they don't just happen one time, right? They're continuously happening. They happen, and then he leaves a certain universe and he appears in another universe, and just like the sun sets, and when it sets somewhere, it's rising somewhere else. Krishna's pastimes end on one planet, and then in another place, they begin again. So at different times, there are maybe different varieties. For example, Srila Sanatana Goswami explains in one place that although Krishna, he leaves Vrindavan and he's on a horse-driven cart, right? In some iterations, it's actually that Kaliya, the many-hooded serpent, takes him. I assume he's driving him on the Yamuna like a boat. So when they say perhaps it's like this or perhaps it's like that, one way of reconciling that is that sometimes it's like this, sometimes like that, sometimes it's different, because it's not a static thing. And then Julie continues with her comments. I also found that the fire may represent fighting mental enemies or looking for a fight with others. I personally feel like the use of fire instead of a demon is present because fire is a force of nature, just like the mind. It has the ability to destroy, transform, and in both of these chapters, separate the devotees from Krishna. In chapter 17, the devotees were asleep when the fire came, but it wasn't the fear of the fire that was disturbing, but the fear of separation from Krishna's lotus feet that was most disturbing. In chapter 19, the cowherd boys were awake, but playfully neglecting their duties with the cows when the fire came. Krishna says, just close your eyes and don't be afraid. It seems notable that in both chapters there is a lack of sight with separation in some way. Yeah. And I think Mel or someone else was pointing out that there's a way in which, because the fire, one of the fires represented conflict, among the association of devotees or between groups of devotees. And she was saying, like fire can spring up very quickly. If you ever had like an experience where you have a spark and just some dry grass. I mean, I started like a small scale fire one time. Long story. But okay. Well, humans are okay. Some plants were harmed. But it happened very quickly. And as she pointed out, like that's the nature of anger and interpersonal conflict. Sometimes it's just like all of a sudden there's this upsurge and it manifests like a forest fire. So there's that. Julie continues, lastly, found a sweet nugget from a Prabhupada lecture referencing Bhagavatam 3:28-40. The verse there is that the blazing fire is different from the flames, from the sparks, and from the smoke, although all are intimately connected because they're born from the same blazing wood. So it's a verse about fire, smoke, and wood. There's another one like that in the first canto, second chapter, where it's described that although fire, smoke, and wood all come from the same thing, fire is actually useful. And in the same way, the three modes of nature are all basically Maya, but of them, better to be in Sattva because it's actually more beneficial for you can actually create a stable situation for ultimately introspection into spiritual life. So Prabhupada says, so you have to go to the Anandamaya. Anandamaya means a platform of bliss. Yad Gitvan Nivartante, Bhagavad Gita 15.6. Tyakta Deham Punarjanma Naiti, Bhagavad Gita 4.9. We have to approach in that way. Otherwise, if we remain in the material world, this will be the result. Dahyamanaha praja sarva. One after another, dahyamanaha. You simply burn into ashes. So therefore, the Vedas say, Astoma Sadgama, don't remain here. Go to Krishna and enjoy life with him. Thank you very much. That's Prabhupada's words. Dahyamanaha means burning. This is a common analogy also given that, like in the first verse of the Guru Vashtakam Samsara Davana Lalitaloka Tranaya, the Guru is delivering us from the forest fire of material existence. Material existence is compared to a forest fire. Why? Because it starts somehow or other. You can have lightning, you can have just some friction, you can have a careless smoker. Somehow or other, there's a forest fire. And even if you don't want to start it, it just happens. And that's the nature of the material world. And Tranaya, the spiritual master, is delivering us from this world of samsara dava, this forest fire of samsara. How? By spreading the water of Krishna Katha and Krishna's glories and Krishna's qualities that they themselves have drawn from the ocean of Krishna's qualities. Just like a cloud draws water from the ocean and then disperses it. So this forest fire analogy is quite common from the Vaishnavas and from Shastra. And then Prabhupada is using it in that talk. So there's that. Yeah, that's some nice perspective. So thank you, Julia. Haribol. This is what happens when devotees are inspired, and then they don't just guess, but they like go into what the acharyas have given, and then they also just share, their reflections, and they reference things nicely. This becomes very deep and very sweet. There's always like a lot of nice layers like that. There's a lot of different ways in which the details of these pastimes can be analyzed and appreciated and discussed more and more. So that's a good example of that. And on that note, let's get some more reflections or comments or questions, anything that stood out from chapters 17 to 19. Yes.
I was just really moved at the end of both purports, at the end of both chapters 17 and 19 after the fire. In the purport, when they spoke about the intensity of the devotees and how they weren't praying for the fire to save their families or their houses, or they were just so worried about their separation from Krishna and their longing for Krishna. And then in the end of chapter 19, when they're talking about the gopis, and then this is a single moment separation from him seems like a million years to them. And I just thought like I was away for a week and I missed my murtis. Like I felt this, like I had my beads and I did my japa, but I felt this longing to just be back and see them. And then when Kishore put all the pictures of the devotees, I raced over here tonight to come in person because I felt that, and it was just so beautiful, just how pure that was.
There's so much anxiety and things we can worry about, but ultimately if we really focus on these devotional desires that want to be with Krishna, want to be with the devotees, I want service, the holy name, prasad, shastra, like that, it's actually a very pure thing. That although we can't say we're on the level of the devotees of Vrindavan, they're giving us a lesson that this is actually, a high thing, that when there's some forest fire, so to speak, in life, some challenge, if you just pray to Krishna that I don't want to be separated from you. I strongly resonate with that. I'm going through a arcane and confusing and multi-level process of reapplying for a green card. And there's so many ways in which it would be like convenient and good for me to have that just approved. But the main thing is that I'm praying to Lord Chaitanya, like, keep me in the association of devotees. Let me keep doing my service. Please let me stay here and expand the service, because there's such opportunity. And that's a way of like really grounding that it's not about what we want on the bodily or mental platform. Ultimately, there's this strong way in which like we need Krishna. We need that association of devotees. And so that's there at the professional level. These boys are just like automatically, as soon as there's trouble, they're like, oh, Krishna, don't leave our sight, we can't stand this separation, help us. And then of course he does. So thank you.
We were talking about it earlier tonight over dinner, but also we were talking about in last class, like about self-help You know, and that we need, self-help has to include the self with the big S, you know, soul, self-help, but also, and also surrendering to Krishna, right? And that, so we apply ourselves, we do our work, but we also take shelter, and it's both. And it's like, without Krishna, it's like, it's kind of a, really difficult situation. I mean, with Krishna, it's even a difficult situation being in material life, you know, and all the forest fires. And
Yeah,
without him, it's just so much more painful.
that's right. It's the ultimate focus for the devotees. It's like Krishna, his service, and his devotees, Sangha. And it makes things simple.
Mhm.
It simplifies things. And yeah, I mean, you can make a pretty good case that without Krishna, there's really no solution to the material forest fires. It's like putting out fires one after the other till you die.
Yeah.
Sorry, hate to be the
And
party
they keep
pooper.
coming back.
And they
do
keep
that
coming
one.
back.
Eternal firefighters.
Eternal firefighters getting burned along the way. You know, not to be too dramatic, but it's like there's no winning that game if there's no broader context of what those battles actually add up to, of what we're actually here to do, rather than just put out the fires and try to create a moment of peace in between the next fire and the last one. Then it's very painful. But the devotees are ultimately, and the most advanced devotees are ultimately really fixed in that Krishna conscious relationship. So much so that they really handle whatever comes their way. We've seen. I read a beautiful. I didn't read it. I skimmed through it, and I heard the summaries from a godbrother of mine. A book called Salted Bread, about the devotees in Siberia, I believe, who were in a Siberian prison for practicing Krishna consciousness. That was illegal at the time in communist Russia, and they were suffering. I mean, just like unbelievable deprivation, abuse, and how satisfied and joyful they were to practice Krishna consciousness, and how Krishna manifested his mercy for them in that situation in a way that like makes our like suffering look really insignificant. That they really just, you know, the process works. Like Krishna is available everywhere, you know, in illness, in prison, in uncertainty. So there's no forest fire he can't swallow. Thank you. More reflections?
I've been thinking a lot about, I mean, just been reading a variety of different things, and this whole concept just keeps coming up of like being consumed by material life. And of course that's like much of what I was thinking about these like forest fires, and just thinking about how life is like that. And I've been really reflecting a lot about like remembering, like really, 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 really focusing on remembering. And I was reading a purport on the Bhagavatam the other day, with Siddhanta, we were reading together, and Prabhupada said it just so simply. He just said the constant thought of Krishna, and then he wrote in parentheses, or Krishna consciousness. So like to like think about Krishna consciousness as this like constant thought of Krishna, of this like act of remembering, you know, like that's such an important part of bhakti. And that's something in my life that I feel like it's like, yeah, of course I'll always return to Krishna in my sadhana, always return to Krishna here and there. And you know, I see the paraphernalia, and it's all these wonderful reminders, but it's like when you're like in it, to like actively remember Krishna in the circumstance. And I just feel like that's just something I've been really holding on to a lot of, and really thinking a lot about that. And just, I don't know, that's ultimately, that is what puts out the fire, right? That's ultimately what is that snuffs the fire. And so I don't know if I have anything important to create a conversation around, but that's just something I've been thinking about.
Yeah, to remember Krishna, never forget him. It's the essence of bhakti. Yeah. Always remember Krishna, never forget him. That's straight from Shastra. And yeah, all the practices are like a way of at the level of vidhi, like meaning regulation. Like we learned about that nectar devotion. First, you practice because there's regulations. Like I'm told to chant, and I accept that authority. It's good for me, so I do it. And then eventually you get a taste for it, and you find yourself chanting spontaneously. And same with all the practices, you eventually get a taste for it spontaneously. And it's like in all these different ways, from different angles of vision and like parts of our lives and different senses and different parts of our psyche are getting used to connecting to Krishna spontaneously until that becomes just who we are, right? So here we're seeing devotees who aren't at the level of practice anymore, if they ever were. They're actually completely perfect. They're always taking shelter of Krishna. So there's no practice for them. It's just the nature of the soul is completely uncovered. So they're always taking shelter of Krishna. And that remembrance, that reconnecting, again, that word remember means to reconnect, is always there because they're always connected. They're never not connected. Speaking for myself, like, and I'm hearing you're identifying this way too, is like a materially conditioned soul is like sometimes consciously connected and sometimes disconnected. And so our practice is like, okay, well, I'm going to go out of my way to make sure I'm connected between this hour and that hour. And when I'm chanting or I'm reading or I'm with devotees, and the rest of the time I'll try my best. But it's actually as our lives go on in bhakti, we're becoming reconnected more often, and more of our day ideally is Krishna conscious. Whether we're in our sadhana or not formally, it's totally possible to be remembering Krishna, whether you're chanting Hare Krishna or not. It just happens to be that chanting is like such a simple and effective and foundational practice that we do it so often and everything. But sometimes you can't, and it's still possible to remember Krishna because it is, after all, his world. There's a way to remember him in any situation. I mean, if they could do it in Siberian prison, then we can do it. And they did. They did. Jai. Yeah, let's go into it. Let's get into chapter 20. This is really neat. I mean, they're all really great, but this chapter has got a special story to it because many of you have read the Light of the Bhagavat, right? Light of the Bhagavat is a book that, if you don't know, Srila Prabhupada wrote before he came to the West. He wrote it when he was in India. He was a sannyasi. He didn't have any money, but he heard about this thing called like a symposium on the human spirit, right? Like that. And he wrote the Light of the Bhagavat. And he wrote that as a summary of this chapter of the Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 20, right? And so it's a little book with beautiful illustrations that came out after Prabhupada left the planet, because they found this manuscript that was never published of this book. And Tamal Krishna Goswami, one of Prabhupada's disciples, contacted a traditional Chinese artist who drew these beautiful illustrations. And so there's this book, Light of the Bhagavat, and it's about nature, right? It's about nature, but it's very Krishna conscious. It's not just like a botanical or, zoological description, but it's using animals and plants and nature to describe life and ultimately Krishna consciousness. And so as those of us who read that book will remember a lot of these things when we're hearing this chapter. So just a little preamble. Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hey, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hey, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Rakshamam, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Pahimam, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rakshamam, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Pahimam. Jai Krishna Book, Chapter 20, Description of Autumn. The killing of Pralambasura and the devouring of the devastating forest fire by Krishna and Balaram became household topics in Vrindavan. Remember, Balaram killed Pralambasura because they played a game, and Pralambasura was on Krishna's side, so then when Krishna lost, Pralambasura had to give Balaram a ride on his shoulders. He thought, well, Krishna's too strong, I can take Balaram out. Not so much. He got canceled, he got finished. And then Krishna ate the forest fire. Okay. The cowherd men described these wonderful activities to their wives and to everyone else, and all were struck with wonder. They concluded that Krishna and Balaram were demigods who had kindly come to Vrindavan to become their children. In this way, the rainy season ensued. In India, after the scorching heat of the summer, the rainy season is very welcome. The clouds accumulating in the sky, covering the sun and the moon, become very pleasing to the people, and they expect rainfall at every moment. After summer, the advent of the rainy season is considered to be a life-giving source for everyone. The thunder and occasional lightning are also pleasurable to the people. The symptoms of the rainy season may be compared to the symptoms of the living entities who are covered by the three modes of material nature. The unlimited sky is like the supreme Brahman, and the tiny living entities are like the covered sky, or Brahman covered by the three modes of material nature. Originally, everyone is part and parcel of Brahman. The supreme Brahman, or the unlimited sky, can never be covered by a cloud, but a portion of it can be covered, as it is right now, April showers. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, the living entities are part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but they are only an insignificant portion of the Supreme Lord. This portion is covered by the modes of material nature, and therefore the living entities are residing within this material world. The Brahma Jyotir, spiritual effulgence, is just like the sunshine. As the sunshine is full of molecular shining particles, so the Brahma Jyotir is full of minute portions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Out of that unlimited expansion of minute portions of the Supreme Lord, some are covered by the influence of material nature, whereas others are free. Clouds are accumulated water drawn from the land by the sunshine. Continually, for 8 months, the sun evaporates all kinds of water from the surface of the globe. And this water is accumulated in the shape of clouds, which are distributed as water when there is need. Similarly, a government exacts various taxes from the citizens, such as income tax and sales tax, which the citizens are able to pay by their different material activities, agriculture, trade, industry, and so on. This taxation is compared to the sun's drawing water from the earth. When there is again need of water on the surface of the globe, the same sunshine converts the water into clouds and distributes it all over the globe. Similarly, the taxes collected by the government must be distributed to the people again as educational work, public work, sanitation work, etc. This is very essential for a good government. The government should not simply exact taxes for useless squandering. The tax collection should be utilized for the public welfare of the state. So already we can see here that this chapter has to do with seeing lessons in nature. That's why it's so conducive, really, to Prabhupada commenting on in his Light of the Bhagavat and here, because there's so much of it that is immediately relatable to us. Like he's saying that just like we can see when the rainy season comes, even if we don't have like a rainy season, like a monsoon season in the West, generally, like they do in India or parts of Indonesia and stuff, we can experience that sometimes it's rainy, sometimes for a few days. Like right now in Burlington, it's cloudy. So the sky, which is normally uncovered, becomes covered, at least part of it. And we can see that it's just part of it, because if you look at the whole Earth, there's a whole giant expanse of sky, and outer space is so much larger than this one little patch of one place that's covered temporarily with clouds. Similarly, in the material world, in all of reality, there's part of it that is just Brahman covered by Maya. That's the material world. And so it can seem like a big deal when you're in it, but it's actually just a corner of all of reality. And then Prabhupada's also giving this example of just like there's groundwater and ocean water, and then sunlight actually evaporates that and becomes clouds, and then the clouds become heavy with water and release the water. Similarly, there's a relationship between the wealth created, capital created by people in a country, and that capital being collected by the leaders and redistributed in an appropriate way, and what is appropriate. And so there's this relationship like of paying your taxes and contributing to society, and also receiving the benefit of being protected and having like roads and guardianship and guidance, so forth. In a traditional society, all those things are there. So just like water, the water cycle is similar to that. This is what this chapter is giving us, is analogies to help us understand reality better. Continuing. During the rainy season, there are strong winds blustering all over the country and carrying clouds from one place to another. to distribute life-giving water to the needy living entities. Water is urgently needed after the summer season. Thus, the clouds are just like a rich man who, in times of need, distributes his money even to the point of exhausting his whole treasury. So the clouds exhaust themselves by distributing water all over the surface of the globe. So here we have like a meditation on the nature of charity. And of course, if anyone has any questions or comments as we go, please pause and raise your hand or make a comment in chat. I'll try to check regularly because a lot you could say about these things. When Maharaj Dasharatha, the father of Lord Ramachandra, used to fight with his enemies, it was said that he approached them just like a farmer uprooting unnecessary plants and trees. And when there was need of giving charity, he used to distribute money exactly as the cloud distributes rain. The distribution of rain by clouds is so sumptuous that it is compared to the distribution of wealth by a great munificent person. The clouds' downpour is so profuse that the rains even fall on rocks and hills and on the oceans and seas where there is no need for water. The clouds resemble a charitable person who opens his treasury for distribution and who does not discriminate with it whether the charity is needed or not. He gives in charity open-handedly. Before the rainfall, the whole surface of the globe becomes almost depleted of all kinds of energies and appears very lean. After the rainfall, the whole surface of the earth becomes green with vegetation and appears to be very healthy and strong. Here a comparison is made to the person undergoing austerities for fulfillment of a material desire. The flourishing condition of the earth after the rainy season is compared to the fulfillment of material desires. Sometimes, when a country is subjugated by an undesirable government, persons and parties undergo severe penances and austerities to get control of the government, and when they attain control, they flourish by giving themselves generous salaries. This temporary profit is like the flourishing of the earth in the rainy season. Actually, one should undergo severe austerities and penances only to achieve spiritual happiness. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is recommended that tapasya, or austerity, should be accepted for realizing the Supreme Lord. By accepting austerity and devotional service, one regains their spiritual life, and as soon as one regains their spiritual life, they enjoy unlimited spiritual bliss. But if someone undertakes austerities and penances for some material gain, it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita that the results are temporary and that they are desired by persons of less intelligence. During the rainy season, in the evening, there are many glowworms visible above the tops of trees hither and thither, and they glitter just like lights. But the luminaries of the sky, the stars and the moon, are not visible. Similarly, in the age of Kali, persons who are atheists or miscreants become very prominently visible, whereas persons who are actually following the Vedic principles for spiritual emancipation are practically obscured. This age, Kali Yuga, is compared to the cloudy season of the living entities. In this age, real knowledge is covered by the influence of the material advancement of civilization. The cheap mental speculators, atheists, and manufacturers of so-called religious principles become prominent like the glowworms, whereas persons strictly following the Vedic principles or scriptural injunctions become covered by the clouds of this age. People should learn to take advantage of the actual luminaries of the sky, the sun, moon, and stars, instead of the glowworms as light. Actually, the glowworms cannot give any light in the darkness of night, as clouds sometimes clear even in the rainy season, and sometimes the moon, stars, and sun become visible. So even in the Kali Yuga, there are sometimes advantages. For example, sometimes Lord Chaitanya's Vedic movement of distributing the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is heard. People seriously eager to find real light should take advantage of this movement instead of looking toward the light of mental speculators and atheists. Yeah, it can be difficult to discern what's substantial and real versus what's not. One of the things that I reflect on when I hear Prabhupada talk this way is that sincere spiritual life is very not flashy, right? It's not that somebody who's spiritually advanced cannot hold a position and have like personal, charismatic, or even financial or other external qualities and attributes and like you can say opulences. Certainly possible, for sure. Intelligence, wealth, beauty, whatever. That's true. But that's not their essential thing. That's like an attribute that they use in Krishna's service. They use it perfectly. But what is always true is, humility, and unswerving devotion and following their own spiritual teachers and always thinking about the welfare of others and deep compassion. And it's like, those are very powerful things, but they're not sexy and flashy, you know, according to the way we think as materially conditioned souls in this age. It's not what you'd look for. There's no magic externally like lights and show and smoke and mirrors. So it's very easy to be taken in by the externals and like miss those incredible, irreplaceable qualities. Because you can find wealth and beauty and fame and intelligence in all kinds of people, good, bad, and otherwise. You know, but you can't find those qualities that is named except in truly spiritually advanced people. It doesn't happen. They can't be faked. And it really can't be obscured either. It's always there. So interesting how there's that thing of like, sometimes we overlook what's right in front of us just to try to find something more advanced. So in this way, devotional service can appear like almost too simple. Devotees can appear like almost like you can take it for granted. After the first rainfall, when there is a thundering sound in the clouds, all the frogs begin to croak like students suddenly engaged in reading their studies. Students are generally supposed to rise early in the morning. They do not usually arise of their own accord, however, but only when there is a bell sounded in the temple or other spiritual institution. By the order of the spiritual master, they immediately rise, and after finishing their morning duties, they sit down to study the Vedas or chant Vedic mantras. Everyone is sleeping in the darkness of Kali Yuga, but when there is a great Acharya, by his calling only, everyone takes to the study of the Vedas to acquire actual knowledge. During the rainy season, many small ponds, lakes, and rivulets become filled with water. Otherwise, the rest of the year they remain dry. Similarly, materialistic persons are dry, but sometimes when they are in a so-called opulent position, with a home or children or a little bank balance, they appear to be flourishing. But immediately afterwards, they become dry again, like the small rivulets and ponds. The poet Vidyapati said that in the society of friends, family, children, wife, etc., there is certainly some pleasure, but that pleasure is compared to a drop of water in the desert. Everyone is hankering after happiness, just as in the desert, everyone is hankering after water. If in the desert there is a drop of water, it may of course be said that water is there, but the benefit from that drop of water is very insignificant. In our materialistic way of life, which is just like a desert, we are hankering after an ocean of happiness, but in the form of society, friends, and mundane love, we are getting no more than a drop of water. Our satisfaction is never achieved, as the small rivulets, lakes, and ponds are never filled with water in the dry season. Due to rainfall, the grass, trees, and other vegetation look very green. Sometimes the grass is covered by a certain kind of red insect, and when the green and red combine with the umbrella-like mushrooms, the entire scene changes, just like a person who has suddenly become rich. The farmer then becomes very happy to see his field full of grain, but the capitalists, who are always unaware of the activities of a supernatural power, become unhappy because they are afraid of a competitive price due to abundant production. In some places, certain capitalists and government restrict the farmers' production of grain, not knowing the actual fact that all food grains are supplied by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. According to the Vedic injunction, Iku Bahunang Yo Viditati Kaman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead maintains this creation. Therefore, he arranges for a supply of whatever is required for all living entities. When there is a population increase, it is the business of the Supreme Lord to feed the people. But atheists or miscreants do not like abundant production of food grains, especially if their business might be hampered. During the rainy season, all living entities in the land, sky, and water become very much refreshed, exactly like one who engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. We have practical experience of this with our students in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Before becoming students, they were dirty looking, although they had naturally beautiful personal features. Think of hippies. That's the context here.
Got it.
Due to having no information of Krishna consciousness, they appeared very dirty and wretched. Since they have taken to Krishna consciousness, their health has improved, and by following the rules and regulations, their bodily luster has increased. When they are dressed with saffron-colored cloth, with tilaka on their foreheads and beads in their hands and on their necks, they look exactly as if they have come directly from Vaikuntha. Just like the rain refreshes the earth, bhakti refreshes the body, even the externals and internals of a living entity. Body, mind, soul. In the rainy season, when the rivers swell and rush to the oceans and seas, they appear to agitate the ocean. Similarly, if a person who is engaged in the mystic yoga process is not very much advanced in spiritual life, they can become agitated by the sex impulse. Although during the rainy season the high mountains are splashed by torrents of rain, they do not change. Similarly, a person who is advanced in Krishna consciousness, even if put into difficulties, is not embarrassed. A person who is spiritually advanced accepts any adverse condition of life as the mercy of the Lord, and thus they are completely eligible to enter into the spiritual kingdom. In the rainy season, some of the roads are not frequently used, and they become covered with long grasses. These roads are exactly like a Brahmana who is not accustomed to studying and practicing the reformatory methods of the Vedic injunctions. He becomes covered with the long grasses of Maya. In that condition, forgetful of his constitutional nature, he forgets his position of eternal servitorship to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By being deviated by the seasonal overgrowth of long grasses created by Maya, a person identifies himself with the Mayic production and succumbs to illusion, forgetting their spiritual life. So, like, there's a way in which if the Brahmin doesn't stay accustomed to practicing and studying, worshiping Krishna and studying Shastra, hearing, then you can just become covered like a road can become covered by weeds, long grasses. It's like if you look at any road, it's just like apparently very easy to tell where you're going, and but as soon as you let it go for some time, then weeds and grass and dry leaves and we had an abandoned highway here. They're rebuilding now, but there was an abandoned highway for like years, and actually it became like almost forest. The concrete was taken over by vegetation. So similarly, our minds and hearts will become overwhelmed with the obscurity of material life if we just keep hearing and chanting material vibration and don't actually take shelter of Shastra and the holy name. That process is always, there's no staying still. You can't be like, well, I heard the mantra and I had an experience once, so I'm good. It's like, you got to keep having that experience because Maya doesn't let up. The grass will keep growing. Yeah. Like practically every one of these paragraphs is a very deep thing. So it almost does it a disservice to like read one paragraph and jump into the next before really like thinking about this. During the rainy season, lightning appears in one group of clouds and then immediately in another group of clouds. This phenomenon is compared to a lusty woman who does not fix her mind on one man. Cloud is compared to a qualified person because it pours rain and gives sustenance to many people. A man who is qualified similarly gives sustenance to many living creatures, such as family members, or many workers in a business. Unfortunately, his whole life can be disturbed by a wife who divorces him. When the husband is disturbed, the whole family is ruined, the children are dispersed, or the business is closed and everything is affected. It is therefore recommended that a woman desiring to advance in Krishna consciousness live peacefully with a husband and that the couple not separate under any condition. The husband and wife should control sex indulgence and concentrate their minds on Krishna consciousness so their life may be successful. After all, in the material world, a man requires a woman and a woman requires a man. When they're combined, they should live peacefully in Krishna consciousness and should not be restless like the lightning, flashing from one group of clouds to another. Yeah, and it works as an instruction to men as well, just like the way of like fickleness and thinking on surface level versus just like being present and dedicated. The surface level benefits are one thing, but you don't get the benefit of like stability. And ultimately, according to the Vedic worldview, like the whole point of being able to get into a relationship is not to satisfy the mind and senses, because you can't in the material world anyway completely. It's to create a stable situation where you learn satisfaction and then you learn deeper things like trust and cooperation and actual love and not just attraction, because that takes service and cooperation, time and sacrifice, and that purifies the heart. And ultimately it creates a place where, because there's enough stability economically, emotionally, geographically, then you can actually go deeper spiritually. Because if there's a way in which, if those things are not as settled, the mind can be very restless, and it can be very difficult to engage it in bhakti. If there's some like, okay, like I have a roof over my head, I have a know where my next meal's coming from, I have like a healthy relationship, I mean, I feel cared for, like that, then you can actually go deeper. So it's what this analogy of lightning and clouds is talking about. Like, don't be like the lightning, like flickering around, like the grass is greener on that side. It's like that's always going to be there in the mental platform, but it's completely a trap, because that's never where happiness is found anyway.
Can you
Yes.
maybe just speak to, everything you said makes complete sense to me, but can you maybe speak to this one line here? It is therefore recommended that a woman or man desiring to advance in Christian consciousness live peacefully with a husband or wife, and that the couple not separate and under any condition, right? And like, we have members in our Sangha who have had divorces and
Yeah.
separations, so can you also contextualize that
Yeah, it's a relative
a little
statement.
bit?
It's not an absolute statement, because even Prabhupada himself, although the traditional culture of the Vedas, the traditional culture of Varnashram is like, doesn't discourage separation, it didn't forbid it. And Prabhupada himself, in trying to like share traditional values for the sake of helping people to practice bhakti, also made like so many exceptions. Like if there's abuse, if there's like a way in which the relationship doesn't actually serve your ultimate spiritual purpose at all, they're getting in the way, they're inimical, there's different things, there's like, so it's a relative thing, but the idea is that one shouldn't think like, well, what have they done for me lately? And like, maybe I'll be happier just doing this or that, and float around, because that mentality creates constantly looking. That's what Rajas is like. I can always find something better, right?
Mhm.
Materially speaking.
Mhm.
So it's a worldview rather that espouses just, don't try to create a perfect material situation. Get into a good, healthy relationship, like a functional, healthy relationship, and just make it work, right? And understand that there is no perfect material relationship, and don't leave that just because maybe you'll find something materially perfect, right? That's a trap of Maya. That's a trap of the mode of passion.
Mhm.
That, you know.
Yeah. Mhm.
So the specific statement, he says like, don't separate under any condition, I could tell you is definitely relative, because he advised some disciples to separate,
Mhm.
if their well-being was at stake, the partner became inimical, became like addicted to drugs, became abusive, different things like that. Mentally, emotionally. It's not that it's across the board.
Yeah.
As always, when it comes to like, individual things, it's not that there is like a one size fits all injunction, really. So this is like that. But Prabhupada is coming from a place where he saw the results, and he understood the results of the spiritual perspective, and he's coming to like 1960s, 1970s North America, where it's free love and float around and polygamy and whatever you want, whatever, anything goes. Prabhupada's like, no, you're gonna just get in your own way. You're like trying to start a fire, and you're pouring water all over it with all this like weird sense gratification and mental speculation. Just like stay still, and like we heard that verse, stane stita, just whatever condition of life you're in, just stay there and hear and chant. Don't try to fix the condition of life so much, right? And that means sometimes someone comes to bhakti and they're single, and it may be better for them to practice long term in a relationship, but ultimately it's good to get that grounding in bhakti first before they start looking around like, how do I find the perfect job or perfect partner? It's like, well, let it come, but first get grounded in bhakti, because that's the whole point of the thing anyway. The thing meaning like our human endeavor. But if you can, yes, good to have a good job and a stable relationship, and just create that stability, and then go deep wherever you happen to be. Don't have to have the perfect job, the perfect partner, because they don't exist anyway. Hope that helps.
It does. I just wanted, when there's absolutes, like, or the statements that sound
Yeah.
absolute, I think it's helpful.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where if you don't have that context, it can be like, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. If that helps. If there's anything in chat, let me know. We can explore that further. But like I said, every one of these paragraphs is very deep, and they all kind of look at different things. So there's lots of lots of reasons we can pause, and I'm open to that.
If you handed that.
His hand is up. Okay, go ahead, Stacy.
You did.
My fake hand and my real hand.
Yes.
So just kind of on that same note, in the last, like my husband, I've been with him for, I don't know, 25 years, and sort of this path that I've been on with Krishna consciousness has pretty much been like he supports it.
Yeah.
He is loving, all of these wonderful things, but he's not kind of in the path with me. But in the last couple of months, he has been, you know, doing some readings with me. When I was doing like the test, he was like, we were studying and doing like just different. We've been reading a shloka from the Gita in the morning. So, you know, he'll say, oh, you know, do you want me to go, you know, are they in bed yet? You know, go
Did
to
he-
my deities. And I said, no, I have to put them to bed. He goes, it's okay, I can put them to bed. So it's sort of like this,
Engaging in service.
yes, and I have to say, you know, we had this really nice, just I don't know, 20-year long conversation, just of like where we're at, and just like a really loving conversation about just us. And it really, totally touching on exactly what you're talking about. It's really about our love for each other, our love for God, obviously Krishna and Radha. That is, and he knows that. Um, he doesn't feel like he is like he believes in God. He doesn't put a name or anything onto it, but he's definitely with me on that path, and really even open to like, yeah, maybe one day, maybe one time I would go on a pilgrimage with you. I was like, wait a minute. That's like I've been to India 9 times. He's never said that. So it's like sort of like just the idea, even if he never went, the idea that he said that
Yeah.
means so much to my heart, because Krishna means so much to my heart. And I
Yeah.
know that all of you can understand that hankering, that yearning, that love, that just and so the fact that he did those things, like you said, it's not about the how, like, I don't know, I mean, after a certain,
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into like
Yeah.
particulars, but those things that you were talking about, it's like it's not what keeps a marriage for 25 years. It's
Yeah.
not. It's the talking and the loving and the learning and the going deeper, and all of that is what can keep you together, but together in love and learning for that long. And
Thank you.
it's
Yeah, I'll just say, it's a real privilege to be connected with a partner who is at least an ally, and
yeah,
that's wonderful. And then what we find too is that when there's like a cooperative mood and service together, just within the unit of the relationship and family, then often there's this way in which over time your by proximity to your service, the other partner can become interested to some degree. It's a very personal thing. Bhakti is such a personal thing, so it's not like, you know, it's a very easy and superficial thing to like make believers or like followers on a superficial level. But if someone's heart actually gets turned, that's not unusual because of like taking prasadam and seeing deities and hearing Hare Krishna and like seeing how their partner is becoming so happy and enlivened by this. So that kind of like hands-off, respectful attitude, letting people make their own decisions, pays off in the long term. And
yeah. Like he went to Gora Parinam with me and sat through 3 hours of kirtan.
that's great.
It's like, what?
That's huge, actually.
So these are just, I don't know, I just wanted to share it because, you know, for others out there that maybe aren't there or in this space, it's, you know, I never really would push him. It's just not my style.
Yeah,
Um,
it
but
develops. It
yeah,
develops. Yeah,
yeah,
and
like,
if you do push, then it doesn't develop because no
no,
one
no,
wants
no,
to
no.
push them.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
thank you for letting me share.
Jai. All right. Continuing. Sometimes In addition to the roaring thunder of the clouds, there is an appearance of a rainbow which stands as a bow without a string. Actually, a bow is in the curved position because it is tied at its two ends by the bowstring, but in the rainbow there is no such string, and yet it rests in the sky so beautifully. Similarly, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead descends to this material world, he appears just like an ordinary human being, but he is not resting on any material condition. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that he appears by his internal potency, which is free from the bondage of the external potency. What is bondage for the ordinary creature is freedom from the personality of Godhead. In the rainy season, the moonlight is covered by clouds, but is visible at intervals. It sometimes appears that the moon is moving with the movement of the clouds, but actually the moon is still. Due to the clouds, it also appears to move. Similarly, for one who has identified himself with the moving material world, his actual spiritual luster is covered by illusion, and with the movement of material activities, he thinks that he is moving through different spheres of life. This is due to false ego, which is the demarcation between spiritual and material existence, just as the moving cloud is a demarcation between moonlight and darkness. In the rainy season, when the clouds appear for the first time, the peacocks dance with joy upon seeing them. The peacocks can be compared to persons who are very much harassed in the materialistic way of life. If they can find the association of a person engaged in the loving devotional service of the Lord, they become enlivened and dance just like peacocks. We have practical experience of this. Many of our students were dry and morose previous to their coming to Krishna consciousness, but having come in contact with devotees, they are now dancing like jubilant peacocks. Plants and creepers grow by drinking water from the ground. Similarly, a person practicing austerities becomes dry, but after the austere performances are completed and he gets the results, he begins to enjoy life and sense gratification with family, society, love, home, and other paraphernalia. He becomes jolly like newly grown plants and grass. Sometimes it is seen that cranes and ducks meander continually on the banks of the lakes and rivers, although the banks are filled with muddy garbage and thorny creepers. Similarly, persons who are householders without Krishna consciousness are constantly tarrying in material life, in spite of all kinds of inconveniences. In family life or any life, one cannot be perfectly happy without being Krishna conscious. Srila Narottama Dasa Thakur prays that he will have the association of a person, either a householder or a man in the roundest order of life, who is engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord and is always crying the holy name of Lord Chaitanya. For the materialistic person, worldly affairs become too aggressive, whereas to a person who is in Krishna consciousness, everything appears to be happily situated.
What is tarrying?
Tarrying means like dallying, just staying and stalling.
Like dilly-dallying?
Yeah, just like taking your time, because he says the ducks meander and they wait. And so the idea is like somebody in material consciousness will become attached to their spouse and children and money and house, and they'll just stay there and never really like think about their spiritual life. Like ducks and other living entities who live in a pond that becomes overflooded with mud and twigs and junk. They don't see its faults. They're just completely attached to that, even though the writing's on the wall, So Prabhupada's kind of criticizing that tendency to just get really comfortable and make a nest and just get stuck in it, no matter how nice it is. Barriers around an agricultural field sometimes break due to heavy torrents of rain. Similarly, the unauthorized atheistic propaganda in the age of Kali breaks the boundary of the Vedic injunctions. Thus, people gradually degenerate to godlessness. In the rainy season, the clouds, tossed by the wind, deliver water which is welcomed like nectar. When the Vedic followers like the Brahmanas inspire rich men like kings and members of the wealthy mercantile community to give charity in the performance of great sacrifices, the distribution of such wealth is also nectarian. The four sections of human society, namely the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and the Shudras, are meant to live peacefully in a cooperative mood. This is possible when they are guided by expert Vedic Brahmanas who perform sacrifices and distribute wealth equally. In a traditional culture, the Brahmins would be very unattached from personal wealth themselves, but because they are so wise due to study and spiritual advancement, they know how to engage opulence and other capital from the other orders of life. So they naturally regulate the society, and because there is faith in and inspiration, in those devotees or advanced brahmanas, they feel inspired by those persons and they'll be guided by them, right? Otherwise, what you have is like market forces, unregulated, like, not to become overly like political, but we can see that there's a need in democratic societies to have like some regulatory agency that regulates market forces. Because if you don't, then people's greed becomes completely untethered and just takes over. Whether that's a regulatory agency, other vaishyas, kshatriya, ultimately the society has to be guided by spiritual wisdom, so that those who are creating capital, or those who are guiding those who are creating capital, i.e. vaishyas and kshatriyas, are guided by spiritual wisdom, so that you know what to do with your wealth, you know how to distribute it, how to give in charity, how to like give back. There's this natural relationship. So this example here is given that just like Brahmins will guide the distribution of wealth in a healthy way without keeping any for themselves, because they're so detached they don't want it or need it. That's part of their qualification for giving that guidance. They're not like profiting off of their own instruction. Similarly, there's a way in which the wind pushes the clouds around, and it arranges for distribution of rainfall. That wind is like Brahmins guiding this wealth of water. So we see all these like beautiful analogies in nature. Vrindavan forest improved from the rains and was replete with ripened dates, mangoes, blackberries, and other fruits. Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, along with his boyfriends and Lord Balaram, entered the forest to enjoy the new seasonal atmosphere. The cows, being fed by new grasses, became very healthy, and their milk bags were all very full. When Lord Krishna called them by name, they immediately came to him out of affection, and in their joyful condition the milk flowed from their bags. Lord Krishna was very pleased when passing through the Vrindavan forest by the site of Govardhan Hill. On the bank of the Yamuna he saw all the trees decorated with beehives pouring honey. There were many waterfalls on Govardhan Hill, and their flowing made a nice sound. Krishna heard them as he looked into the caves of the hill. When the rainy season was not ended completely but was gradually turning to autumn, sometimes, especially when there was rainfall within the forest, Krishna and his companions would sit under a tree, or within the caves of Govardhan Hill, and enjoy eating the ripened fruits and talking with great pleasure. When Krishna and Balaram were in the forest, Mother Yashoda used to send them some fruits, sweetmeats, and rice mixed with yogurt. Krishna would take them, sit down on a slab of stone on the bank of the Yamuna, and call his friends to join him. While Krishna and Balaram and their friends were eating, they watched the cows, calves, and bulls. The cows appeared to be a little tired from standing with their heavy milk bags. By sitting and chewing grass, they became happy, and Krishna was pleased to see them. He was proud to see the beauty of the forest due to the rainy season, which was nothing but the manifestation of his own energy. At such times, Krishna would praise nature's special activities during the rainy season. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita that the material energy, or nature, is not independent in its actions. Nature is acting under the superintendence of Krishna. This is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, which states that material nature, known as Durga, is acting as the shadow of Krishna. Whatever order is sent from Krishna, material nature obeys. Therefore, the natural beauty created by the rainy season was acted out according to the indications of Krishna, who thus felt very proud of material nature's beautiful activities. Jai. When Krishna and Balaram were enjoying the gifts of the rainy season in this way, the autumn season gradually arrived, when all the water reservoirs become very clean, and when pleasing and refreshing air blows everywhere. With the appearance of autumn, the sky was completely cleared of all clouds, and it recovered its natural blue color. The blooming lotus flowers in the clear water in the forest appeared like persons who have fallen down from yoga practice, but have again become beautiful by resuming their spiritual life. Everything becomes naturally beautiful with the appearance of the autumn season. Similarly, when a materialistic person takes to Krishna consciousness and spiritual life, they also become as clear as the sky and water in autumn. The autumn season takes away the rolling of dark clouds in the sky as well as the polluted water. Filthy conditions on the ground also become cleansed. Similarly, a person who takes the Krishna consciousness immediately becomes cleansed of all dirty things within and without. Krishna is therefore known as Hari. Hari means he who takes away. Krishna immediately takes away all unclean habits from anyone who takes the Krishna consciousness. The clouds of autumn are white, for they do not carry any water. Similarly, a retired man being freed from all responsibility of family affairs, namely maintaining the house, wife, and children, and taking completely the Krishna consciousness, becomes freed from all anxieties and looks as white as clouds in autumn. Sometimes in autumn the falls come down from the top of the hill to supply clean water, and sometimes they stop. Similarly, sometimes great saintly persons distribute clear knowledge, and sometimes they are silent. The small ponds which were filled with water because of the rainy season gradually dry up in autumn. As for the small aquatics living in the reservoirs, they cannot understand that their ponds are diminishing day by day, just as the materially engrossed persons cannot understand that their duration of life is being reduced day by day. Such persons are engaged in maintaining cows, property, children, wife, society, and friendship. Due to the reduced water and scorching heat from the sun in the autumn season, the small creatures living in small reservoirs of water are very much disturbed. They are exactly like uncontrolled persons who are always unhappy from being unable to enjoy life or maintain their family members. The muddy earth gradually dries up and newly grown fresh vegetation begins to wither. Similarly, for one who has taken to Krishna consciousness, desire for family enjoyment gradually dries up. I'm going to pause here and mention that this week, because we're only going to get through this one chapter. This week's weekly homework is going to be not just reading, but I'd like you to reflect on one thing about how, there's so many different analogies given in this chapter. Like this is the whole Light of the Bhagavad book in one class here, basically, the Krishna book. So I want you to apply in your life how you've seen one of these analogies play out in your life, either personally or in the world around you. That, like you've seen, for example, society guided by spiritual wisdom, like society guided by Brahmins, or you've seen the opposite and how that has created problems. Just reflect on, apply one of these analogical relationships, that society runs like this, and this is how we can see it in nature. Look at that in your own life or in the world around you, and give a reflection. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. In the chat, Mel asks, what are sweetmeats? So I just Googled it. It's an item of confectionery or sweet food.
It's like I was thinking about it, like it's the meaty part of a sweet. It's like the juiciest part of whatever the sweet is you're eating. That's what I'm
not sure the origin of that word. It's maybe a little bit archaic. It's not used as much. But a food rich in sugar, a candied or crystallized fruit, candy or confection. So it's a confection or sweet, delicacy. In fact, the word sweet appears to be short for sweetmeat.
Huh. Really?
In many English-speaking countries. That's what Wikipedia says. Go figure. So, all right. Continuing, because we're going to finish this chapter or die trying.
We can do it.
Because of the appearance of the autumn season, the water of the ocean becomes calm and quiet, just as a person developed in self-realization becomes free from disturbance by the three modes of material nature. In autumn, farmers save the water within the fields by building strong walls, so that the water contained within the field cannot run out. There is hardly any hope for new rainfall, therefore they want to save whatever is in the field. Similarly, a person who is actually advanced in self-realization protects their energy by controlling the senses. It is advised that after the age of 50, one should retire from family life and conserve the energy of the body for utilization in the advancement of Krishna consciousness. Unless one is able to control the senses and engage them in the transcendental loving service of Mukunda, there is no possibility of salvation. So like turning away from making money, spending money, and sex, and the busy intense work of raising children. That has to happen at some point, like retiring from that. And that reapportioning that energy to go inwards is actually like really advisable, not just taking Viagra, trying to be a 20-year-old or whatever. It's like very modern, very silly idea. During the daytime in autumn, the sun is very scorching, but at night, due to the clear moonshine, people get relief from the day's fatigue. Similarly, a person who takes shelter of Mukunda or Krishna can be saved from the fatigue of misidentifying the body with the self. Mukunda or Krishna is also the source of solace for the damsels of Vrindavana. The damsels of Vrajbhumi are always suffering because of separation from Krishna. But when they meet him during the moonlit autumn night, their fatigue of separation is relieved. When the sky is clear of all clouds, the stars at night shine very beautifully. Similarly, when a person is actually situated in Krishna consciousness, they are cleared of all dirty things, and they become as beautiful as the stars in the autumn sky. Although the Vedas contain instructions for pursuing knowledge, gyan, for practicing mystic yoga, and for engaging in karmic activities in the form of sacrifices, the ultimate purpose of the Vedas is stated in the Bhagavad Gita. One has to accept Krishna consciousness after thoroughly studying the Vedas. Therefore, the clean heart of a devotee in Krishna consciousness can be clean compared to the clean sky of the autumn season. During autumn, the moon looks very bright along with the stars in the clear sky. Lord Krishna himself appeared in the sky of the Yadu dynasty, and he was exactly like the moon, surrounded by the stars, or the members of the Yadu dynasty. When there are ample blooming flowers in the gardens and the forest, the fresh aromatic breeze gives great relief to the persons who have suffered during the summer and rainy seasons. Unfortunately, such breezes could not give any relief to the gopis because of their heart's dedication to Krishna. People in general might have taken pleasure in that nice autumn breeze, but the gopis, not being embraced by Krishna, were not very much satisfied. On the arrival of the autumn season, all the cows, deer, birds, and females in general become pregnant, because in that season all the husbands generally become impelled by sex desire. Such pregnant females are exactly like the transcendentalists who, by the grace of the Supreme Lord, are bestowed with the benediction of their destinations in life. Sri Rupa Goswami has instructed in his Upadeshamrita that one should execute devotional service with great enthusiasm, patience, and conviction, and should follow the rules and regulations, keep oneself clean from material contamination, and stay in the association of devotees. By following these 6 principles, one is sure to achieve the desired result of devotional service. For one who patiently follows the regulative principles of devotional service, the time will undoubtedly come when they will achieve the desired result, just as the females reap results by becoming pregnant. There's a season, in other words, like once it happens that there's conception, there's going to be birth. It's just, it happens in its own time. So the Bhagavatam is mentioned just like there's a season of conception and then there's pregnancy and birth. Similarly, spiritual life is like that. There's a way in which you begin to practice and you continue practicing. And if you're patient and you follow the process, it'll happen in its own good time. That the complete fruit of the result of bhakti is there. We talked about that at length in our Light of the Bhagavat class. So if you want more on that, shameless plug, you can check that class. There's a few classes out. Many of you were there, so you know. During the autumn, the lotus flowers in the lakes grow in large numbers because of the absence of lilies. Both the lilies and the lotus flowers grow by sunshine, but during the autumn season, the scorching sunshine helps only the lotus. This example is compared to a country where the king or the government is strong. The unwanted elements like thieves and robbers cannot prosper. When the citizens become confident that they will not be attacked by robbers, they develop with great satisfaction. A strong government is compared to the scorching sunshine in the autumn season. The lilies are compared to unwanted persons like robbers, and the lotus flowers are compared to the satisfied citizens. During autumn, the fields become filled with ripened grain. At that time, the people become happy over the harvest and observe various ceremonies such as Navana, the offering of new grain to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The new grain is first offered to the deities in various temples, and all are invited to take sweet rice made with this new grain. There are other religious ceremonies and methods of worship, particularly in Bengal, where the greatest of all such ceremonies is held called Durga Puja. In Vrindavan, the autumn season was very beautiful because of the presence. It was very beautiful then because of the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna and Balaram. The mercantile community, the royal order, and great sages were free to move about in order to achieve their desired benedictions. Similarly, the transcendentalists, when freed from the encagement of the material body, also achieved their desired goal. During the rainy season, the mercantile community cannot move from one place to another and so do not get their desired profit, nor can the royal order go from one place to another to collect taxes from the people. As for the saintly persons, one must travel to preach transcendental knowledge. They are also restrained by the rainy season, but during the autumn, all of them leave their confines. In the case of the transcendentalists, be they a jnani, a yogi, or a devotee, because of the material body, they cannot actually enjoy spiritual achievement. But as soon as they give up the body, or after death, the jnani merges into the spiritual effulgence of the Supreme Lord. The yogi transfers himself to the various higher planets, and the devotee goes to the planet of the Supreme Lord, Goloka Vrindavan, or one of the Vaikunthas, and thus enjoys their eternal spiritual life. So it's just like when the rainy season ends, everyone who is stuck for 4 months, because of the long rainy season in India, they can travel. The students can go back to school, the preachers can go preach, the itinerants can go travel, and the merchants can, life goes on. So it's called Chaturmasya, these 4 months of the rainy season. You stay in one place because you have to. And Prabhupada is saying, what the Bhagavatam is saying is that life is like a Chaturmasya. Life is like this little rainy season. And it's actually like a preparation for the next. It's not the whole thing. We think it's the whole thing, but it's actually like high school. You think it's the whole thing, and then you graduate like, wow, that was just like a little pod. And real life opens up. So our human existence is actually like preparation. And when you die, you go into the real thing. You take whatever you've learned, you take whatever you've developed, and you move forward. That's what this chapter is saying. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 20th chapter of Krishna, description of autumn. Haribol! Jai. Okay, we did it. Let's take any comments, questions, or reflections. Anything that you heard that stood out? Anything you want to explore more? So much philosophy and social and psychological, and sexual and political and economic commentary here.
I just can't believe the timelessness of it. It's like so long ago, written and translated, but like every paragraph, you
Yeah.
can pick out something applicable to the human condition.
The more that
society.
changes, the more that stays the same.
It's unbelievable. Why
Yeah.
are we trying, right? Why are we trying to fix so much?
Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Yeah. There's good practical wisdom here, and it's also ultimately with a core of Krishna consciousness. It's like if we just took these things even atheistically, we'd have a more balanced approach to life. But ultimately, like really, the main thing is that there's good wisdom here with a core of actually how to have a life that advances one spiritually. It's really beautiful. And so it's so old, but it's still so today's relevant. 100 years ago it was relevant. Whatever's happening 100 years from now, it will be relevant.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thank you.
I
More.
think it's really interesting after these couple of chapters with the forest fires. It's an interesting placement of this natural analogy chapter, like, you know, going through every element of nature right after these two forest fires that we question what was validity of those fires, what were they teaching us, and all of that. I just think it's really interesting. And the one statement that I wrote down here about, you know, natural material energy is not independent in its actions. Nature is acting under the superintendent of Krishna. You know, just thinking back to those fires again, the whole time I was thinking about all these natural analogies throughout this chapter. I don't know, that's my comment. I just think it's really interesting. And The Light of the Bhagavat was the most beautiful book that we've read outside of this one. And it's really neat to go back and read this chapter now.
Yeah.
Together, since we did the Light of the Bhagavat together as well. So thank you.
I'll say, yeah, two things. One is I also appreciate that transition from the forest fires to this is almost like the unnatural demonic like disease condition, how Krishna cures that. And then here's a whole chapter just about, in fact, he's been doing that for a few chapters, like Kaliya, Pralambasura was killed by Balaram, but so many demons. And here's like a beautiful, just harmonious presentation of the natural order. and how that's not just like a beautiful image of a community like Vrindavan, but also if you have the eyes to see it, you can extract from that the wisdom of how society is supposed to work and the natural order of that society with Krishna and Bhakti in the center. And that's very satisfying to hear. The other thing I was going to say is that just like last week when I empowered and encouraged Julia to look into that chapter, this is ultimately the 20th chapter of the Bhagavatam. Each one of these things is a verse. So if anybody, Tanya or anyone else, is inspired, I will send the link right now for the Bhagavatam Canto 10, Chapter 20. You can read any or all of it, and it'll have more detail than we had here. Because Prabhupada is giving us the summary in one chapter, and in the Light of the Bhagavad book, he gave it in the form of one book, but all of them are derived from one particular series of verses in that chapter, which is like, just looking here, the chapter is itself 49 verses. In fact, the Light of the Bhagavad with 49 chapters, because each one of those was like a couple paragraphs based on each verse. So you can see what Prabhupada, how he divided it up. But if you look at all these verses, you'll find, again, what did Sanatana Goswami say? What did Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur say? There's commentary here. In fact, it looks like our acharyas have, like our modern acharyas, the students of Prabhupada, have gone full circle and quoted a lot of the Light of the Bhagavad in these purports. So you'll find all three things. Krishna book, Light of the Bhagavad, and Bhagavatam mixed together. If anyone wants to, there's a link.
Yeah.
Feel free. If you do, and you have comments that you share in the WhatsApp, I will start next class with that.
I love it.
Any more quick comments before we end for the week? Always the saddest part of the week.
I was listening to a lecture of Radhanath Swami's a couple of days ago, and he was talking about thinking about the water cycle and thinking about the clouds as like this filtering process, right? Of like for purification, and that lets like Krishna's presence in our lives. And it made me think I was thinking about that lecture as we were reading this. Of course, there are so many different analogies for clouds in this reading, but also really thinking about like how he takes when he evaporates the water, the salt water, which is undrinkable, and then it's processed through the clouds, and then it becomes drinking water for so many people, right? And that's just this way of like filtering. And then thinking about it, like how the clouds are like, also what can cover us seeing the truth. And like really kind of thinking about this a little bit more deeply and thinking about like this really important purpose to like having these clouds in our lives and allowing ourselves to move through that, so that eventually that clarity can really come. So whether it's like the clouds pass and you can see the clouds, the stars and the moon more clearly, like this chapter is saying, or also like the purification process of like moving through the clouds, but just like the importance of hardship and the importance of the clouds and the importance of all of that brings us here and to where we are. It's a really neat thing to start thinking more about more deeply.
Yeah, it's a kind of like it's a perspective. I agree. I share that. It's like a perspective on like the necessity of struggle in life. There has to be some struggle. There has to be some conflict. There has to be some challenge.
Yep.
The nature of the material world is that's built in, right? So as devotees, we try not to create more unnecessary. We're not like dramatic people. We don't create drama because it's already there. But embracing that everything is an opportunity to actually deepen our relationship with Krishna really makes those things more tolerable, but also ultimately gives us the real fruit. The real benefit is that we become closer to Krishna because that cloud passes over. Like when it's there, you feel separation from, you somehow or other, and then you get through it, and that offers a lesson. It's just, it's important, I think, to remember that sometimes, because at least in my case, my material mind is like, why can't I just be happy and peaceful all the time? But I know that in the conditioned state, I would just become complacent and I wouldn't move, and there'd be stasis. There'd be no growth, and the soul can't live like that. doesn't give joy. We're not static, and bhakti isn't static. And our spiritual goal isn't static. It's not like we're going for like a nirvana, like end it all, no more drama. Like, we're going for ultimate dynamic relationship with Krishna. And so even in preparation for that, there has to be some struggle. Thank you.
I just want to say that just that I completely agree, and that Kishori and I have spoken. She knows that I've been going through some of this Krishna's arrangement kind of stuff, and it's sort of like, it's similar to what it's like. The analogies in this chapter are so crazy, and it's just sort of like, you know, breathe, let it sit, and sort of just know, like, and call out, like Draupadi did, call out and say, Krishna, like, I am suffering, help. And he will, even if he doesn't take away what's going on, he'll he I feel like, for me at least, he helps me to see that this is his arrangement, and that I will make it through, and that I am okay, and just breathe, which is what Kishore said, just breathe, just breathe. But it's really true. Like, I feel like if I do that, and when I do that, not if, when I do it, if I don't, and I just try and hard knuckle it, it doesn't go well. But when I do call out, it doesn't change. I don't think that I can see, but I wouldn't know. I don't feel like it would change how things might go, but it would change how it goes here.
Yeah, it doesn't change the externals, but it changes the internals.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Thank you. Yeah. On that note, there's a lot of analogies in this chapter. So I'm looking forward to reading your comments and reflections on any one or more of these in the WhatsApp. Yeah. Sometimes you get through 3 chapters, sometimes you get through 1. Today was just 1, but it's a deep one. So grateful for all of you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Thanks to our YouTube contingent. We love you, we miss you. And we'll see you in the sound vibration of Krishna Katha discussing this chapter. Haribol.